Today we will be doing lesson 75, compare decimals. The I can statement, or the goal for this lesson, is I can compare decimals to hundredths by reasoning about their size. Before we jump into the lesson, I want to review what we talked about last week real quickly. So these are the place values for the numbers that we've been working with. So we have, all the way at the left, we have thousands, then we have hundreds, tens, ones. Here's our decimal. And then after that, we're kind of mirroring like we talked about. Now we have tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. That's hard to say. Remember, we were talking about if you split it right here, after the ones, and pretend that this is really a made-up thing called oneths, then it would be a perfect mirror image, right? We'd have ones, oneths, tens, tenths, hundreds, hundredths, thousands, thousandths. So we talked about that being a mirror, and that's important to understand as we work further with decimals and place value. Compare some decimals. Allie found 0.2 or 2/10 of a dollar, and Gemma found 0.23 or 23 hundredths of a dollar. Which friend found more money? The instructions say to compare decimals, you can use a number line. So this is one way we could do it, right? We could draw a number line, and then she marked 2/10 or 20 hundredths here, and 23 hundredths here. So step 2, the number farther to the right is greater, right? Because the number line is going upward from left to right. So 23 hundredths is greater than 2/10. So Gemma found more money. Another way you can do it is compare equal size parts. This is similar to when we were finding common denominators. So step 1, it says write 2/10 as a decimal in hundredths, right? Because Gemma's, she found 0.23 or 23 hundredths. Hers is in hundredths, so we need to convert Allie's to hundredths so we can compare apples to apples, right? Instead of apples to oranges. So 2/10, 0.2 is 2/10, which is equivalent to 20 hundredths. Remember when we did that? So that's where this comes in handy. So 2/10 turns into 20 hundredths right here. And now it's really simple. Right now you're comparing apples to apples. So 23 hundredths is greater than 20 hundredths. And then they rewrite it like this. 0.23 or 23 hundredths is greater than 0.2 or 2/10. So Gemma found more money. So for number 1, it wants us to compare 17 hundredths and 13 hundredths. So when you compare decimals or any number, you always start in the whole numbers, right? But all of these whole numbers are going to have 0 because we're just dealing with just decimals. So we're going to move to the tenths column for the place value of the tenths. So here, now we're at tenths. So in the tenths, they both have a 1. So far they're equal. Now we'll move to the hundredths column. So in this hundredths column, we have a 7, and this we have a 3. Since 7 is greater than 3, 17 hundredths must be greater than 13 hundredths. Let's try number 2. All right, here we have 8/10 or 8 hundredths. So we could do it this way, right? We could just compare it and say, okay, in the tenths here we have an 8. In the tenths here we have a 0. 8's greater than 0, so 8/10 must be greater than. But let's double check that by doing something else. Remember, 8/10 really equals 80 over 100. We learned this last week, which also equals 0.80. So if this was 0.80, now we would be dealing with apples and apples, right? We'd be dealing with 80 hundredths and 8 hundredths. And it becomes really clear that 80 is greater than 8. Let's move on to number 3. All right, here we're dealing with hundredths and hundreds, right? We have 36 hundredths and 63 hundredths. So in the tenths column here, we have a 3. In the tenths column here, we have a 6. We don't even have to go any further. We know that 6 is greater than 3, so 63 hundredths must be greater than 36 hundredths. Number 4, we're dealing with tenths and hundredths. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this
4/10 I know equals 40 over 100, and I know that that equals 0.40. I'm going to turn this into 40 hundredths, and now since I have hundredths and hundredths, I can see that 40 hundredths is equal to 40 hundredths. So 4/10 and 40 hundredths are the same, right? And we even said that here. 4/10 and 40 hundredths are the same. So 40 hundredths and 40 hundredths are the same. All right, pause the video here, and I want you to solve numbers 5, 6, 7, and 8 on your own. When you unpause the video, I'm going to solve them. All right, let's solve them. So, number 5, we start in the tenths column, right? Here we have a 7, here we have a 6. So 75 hundredths is greater than 69 hundredths. And we could support this with a number line too if we wanted, right? If we had a number line, and right here we had 65 hundredths, and then right here we had 70 hundredths, and here we had 75 hundredths, and here we had 80 hundredths. This first plot would be right here, and the second one would be right here. So now it's even here, it's easy to tell that 75 hundredths must be greater than 69 hundredths. Let's go to number 6. 3/10 and 7/10. We're dealing with apples and apples, right? Tenths and tenths. So we just go to the first column. 3 and 7, those are both in the place value of tenths. And we have 7/10 is greater. 7/10 is greater than 3/10. Moving on to number 7. Here we have a 4 in the tenths, and here we have a 3 in the tenths. Which is greater? 45 hundredths is greater than 37 hundredths. And we could support that with a number line too, right? So if we did that, we had 35 hundredths, 40 hundredths, and 45 hundredths. 37 hundredths would be about here. 45 hundredths would be about here. Right, so this 45 hundredths comes right here. This 37 hundredths comes right here. So 45 hundredths is greater than 37 hundredths. And last but not least, we have 96 hundredths is blank 70 hundredths. So we can start in the tenths column. And here we have a 9, here we have a 7. 9 is greater than 7, so 96 hundredths is greater than 70 hundredths. All right, I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Please fill out the Google form. If you have scrap paper, you do not have to submit it to me. Thank you.